Good evening and welcome to the Resources Committee meeting. Just some simple housekeeping rules. If there's a fire alarm tonight, we depart by the open door to my left and to my right out there and down the stairs outside and wait to told to come back in. We don't anticipate any fire alarms. You never know. It's a slightly different arrangement. Those who have been here before would have seen a full council meeting. This is a committee meeting. I'm the chairman of the Resources Committee. To my right is the vice chairman, of course, of the committee, and the committee manager sits on my far right. The officer who presents the reports will normally sit on my left, and our legal officer is at the end. Our committee clerk is sat on a little table by herself. We will deal with item 4. Can I point out when I get to it? Have I got any apologies for absence? I've got Councillor Allibone, Emerson and Partridge Underwood. Anybody else, or have we got a full house? Right. Do we have any declarations of interest? I'll start from Councillor Graves going round.
Yes, Chairman. Agenda item 9. I declare an interest. Appendix B on item 3. I am a member of the Royal British Legion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carr.
Agenda item number 9. I've accidentally been made a member of the Royal British Legion. I don't know at the moment how that's happened, so I think I need to declare an interest at this stage.
Thank you very much. And congratulations on being made a member of the Royal British Legion. Councillor Harrington's joined a regular council. No other declarations. Confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of 6th, 2014. May I sign them as a record? True. I'll do it in a minute. They're somewhere. Item 4. Now, we do have a number of speakers for that. We're allocated 3 minutes to speak. I appreciate everybody listening to each speaker, as I expect members of the public to listen to each councillor as they partake. Before we go to the speakers, I hope you'll agree with me, and we might be able to get past this out of the way early before we go into a further debate. I hope members will agree with me that we've been given a great deal more information in relation to the Glamis Hall matter. Given that, I'm minded to ask if you would agree that we can safely deal with 4.1 immediately and resolve to set aside our previous decision so we can fully consider all the new material and agree a way forward tonight. I so move from the chair. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Are you in favour to set aside the previous decision on Glamis Hall? Mike, please, Councillor.
Chairman, thank you. May I move an amendment to that proposal?
Go on.
I'm agreeing with the sentiment of the proposal, but I would wish to add at the end, the committee is invited to consider setting aside the decision to close Glamis Hall that it took on the 25th of June 2014 until at least November 2015. I think the time has come to allow a year for this to be sorted out, and I propose that amendment.
Right, have a seconder. Does anybody want to speak to that amendment? Right, we'll put that to the vote. Those in support of that amendment as proposed, please show. I have 3. Those against, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4. That is lost. The original proposal, 4-1, to set aside the decision to close Glamis Hall on the 25th. Please show if you support that. Anybody against? Okay, that's set aside. So we start from base square one tonight on Glamis Hall. Therefore, we'll start the first speaker. Just find my list. Bear with me a second.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? When the speakers speak, is it possible to, if they raise certain matters, that we can ask for clarification on points?
No.
Or do we do that later?
We don't have clarification. It's
okay.
Straightforward speak, as in the council.
Okay.
Clarification is only at the planning committee. So we have Heather Saunders to speak first.
Thank you. Good evening. You have an opportunity tonight to do something good, something 10,000 voters want you to do. We've read the new report and all the other papers we've been sent over the past couple of months, and we fully understand the challenges the building presents. There are some interesting figures in the new report, though. An overhead charge for finance, IT and HR to the day centre of £51,500 a year. There are only 11 staff. That's almost 4,700 a head. If your back office costs are that high, no wonder you haven't got any money. There's £860,000 in your capital budget on a line item called New Scheme, Ongoing Rolling Compulsory Purchase Order Fund. I thought you said, Mr Chairman, you didn't have any new money. If you transfer the building to us, you won't need to fully fund everything, but you have got £305,000 in that fund allocated to this year. Couldn't you just use some of it to help us save Glamis Hall? But this is really about the people that go to Glamis Hall every week, about their families, about the people the doctors still need to refer to a day centre. They told us this only yesterday. About the people that voted you into the positions you hold at this council. Do you think they will vote for you again in May? Let me share with you the vision of an organisation that you'll hear from later tonight. We are working towards a society in which people's health and social care needs are heard, understood and met. This is supported by their values, and I've paraphrased a couple of them for you. Start with people first, set the agenda and make change happen. Be innovative and creative. Know that we can't fix things by sticking to the status quo. Work in partnership with the public, health and social care sectors and the voluntary and community sector. The Save Glamis Hall committee shares these values. Do you? Or are you just going to focus on the figures in the report? Can you show the people of Wellingborough that you're willing to work with them, with us, that you really do listen? Will you step up and help us on a journey which will be difficult, sometimes frustrating, certainly tiring, but ultimately rewarding? One of our speakers at last meeting suggested you could be Wellingborough's heroes if you helped us rebuild Glamis Hall. I won't go that far, but you certainly wouldn't do yourselves any harm if you reversed your decision and showed you can work in partnership with us to go forward together. We know this isn't going to be easy, that we'll have to raise huge amounts of money, get incorporated, run a charity, learn how to apply for grants, organise rafts of volunteers to help fix up the building and run its services. None of us had any campaigning experience before this, and before we received that letter dated the 2nd of July, we didn't even know one another. We've come together as an extension of the Glamis Hall community and shown that we can get organised and run an excellent campaign on our own. Imagine what we could do with your help. Option D in Appendix 1. Please accept our proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Anthony Page next.
Good evening. We seem to be going round in circles, not getting the answers to our questions. It is a simple task of shaping the future of Glamis Hall together. With our committee, this is time with open doors and open ears and listening ears. Why the reluctance? We feel your plan for this is to fail us. I note again that neither of the proposals, Action 4142, presented today, address the wording of our petition, which over 10,000 have signed, and which is also now registered in Parliament. Mr. Bell, have you heard from the Department of Communities and Local Government yet? You had your fixed agendas already prepared, made clear in your lengthy speeches. With the judicial review looming, it will actually cost the council dearly in solicitors and administration fees, more than it would to refurbish or to keep the operations of the hall open for many months. Can you explain why your fees for using the hall facilities have not gone up to meet increasing costs? The daycare centre is a shortfall of around £7 per person per day if 50 people attend. Yet you have never asked the users what they actually can afford or are willing to pay. Did you have a plan to gradually discontinue the service, or is this just inefficiency? Yes. You will say you are not equipped to deal with some of the users needs such as bathing facilities, yet you have offered these services. Why did you purchase a specialist bath in 2012 if your staff are not now trained to offer this service? You have brought this unfortunate predicament and pressure on yourselves. Our resolution to minimise any further costs that we, the committee and the community, work together closely. We are enthusiastic, energetic and enterprising, with or without the council. If not, then hand it over to us as a community asset transfer basis. Our plan would be to refurbish the existing premises opposed to a costly new build. Actually double the capacity. Already we have started fundraising campaigns. Local trades people have come forward offering assistance at this time. We have the power and the need to take full advantage. We watch the wonderful work Steele and Bray are achieving, enhancing, refurbishing dwellings in and around Sylvanus and Diana House on Queensway. These properties are all of the same age as Glamis. The architect had a vision. Supporters of Glamis also have a vision. Surely we can adopt the same principles.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Graham Campbell.
Good evening. After our last meeting on the 2nd of September, could I ask that each and every one of you please take note of the speakers tonight and the 10,000 from the petition, the people who you represent. Last time I felt this wasn't the case and the petition wasn't taken into account. A lot was said about the condition of the building. Councillor Lawman said he wouldn't take his family there. If it is so bad after his last visit, why didn't he take action and make it safer? Obviously, all these years, my father's been going to an unsafe building that the council know about and haven't acted upon. Asbestos was mentioned. Straight away, people's ears prick up. The exact reaction that was wanted. We'd already received a report from the council identifying only 3 cases, 2 being with the heating that would require attention on refurbishment or rebuilding, and 1 being the removable steps to the stage. These were scored as a risk band C, which is low priority category. Everything else in the building is an E, no suspect materials being detected. Unlike the building we're in now, that has 6 rooms category B, so that any slight deterioration in one of a number of factors will result in an unacceptable level of risk. Because of the publicity surrounding the dangers of asbestos, this is always going to be used as a major factor in the demise of Glamis Hall. All buildings of the same age have a certain amount of asbestos. Has it stopped other developers refurbishing other properties of the same age? No, it hasn't. In the feasibility update from Underwoods, £1,000 was quoted for an asbestos survey. Nothing for the removal and disposal. Of the 3 cases I mentioned earlier, this amounts to £125 plus VAT. Yes, Glamis is of an age, but it is definitely not dangerous. The one thing that has come out of this whole debate is how poorly promoted the fantastic facilities of Glamis Hall are and how much Glamis Hall has to offer the whole town. Speaking to people on the street, I've realised how much money the council has missed out upon by not communicating with local projects and organisations who desperately need Glamis Hall and didn't know it even existed. So much so that the situation wouldn't have arose because Glamis would have generated income above and far beyond its running costs. A local group who are funded by the county council need a changing room for their running team as well as a kitchen to help people cook and give their clients a purpose in life. The 4 changing rooms with 24 showers is ideal for these people, the same changing rooms that have been quoted as the best in the Sunday Football League. Another local running group who meet twice a week with 150 to 200 members desperately need changing rooms and also a hall for their 40 youngsters in the group. Glamis Hall once again. We've seen the reports of other football pitches in the area, but none of them can match Glamis Hall. This building has been played down for many years and it's time to use it to its full potential, retaining its current users and allowing new ones. We look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you very much.
Betty Ashton, I'm going to bring the mic over to you, Betty. Or are we going to come to the table? Whichever's easier.
Mr Chairman, councillors. As a user of the Glamis Hall Day Centre, I want to put the record straight about the condition of certain areas at Glamis Hall. These are areas criticised by Councillor Laura Lawman at the extraordinary meeting on September the 2nd. Her description of the dreadful state of the toilets was greatly exaggerated. There are 2 sets of toilets, and one set is much older than the other. The old set has, I believe, been there ever since the hall was built. Both sets of toilets are cleaned every day, but of course, no matter how often the oldest toilets are cleaned, it is impossible to make them look like the newer ones. I use the toilets every week, and I have never seen them in the condition described by Councillor Lawman. There are times when there is water on the floor, and this is possibly because the wash basins are small and shallow, and this results in water splashing over the top and onto the floor. I think Councillor Lawman has based her criticism of the toilets on using them when she has been to Glamis Hall party days. I would like to point out to her that on party days there are between 120 and 130 people using the toilet facilities, whereas on a normal day the number is about 50, quite a considerable difference. I can confidently inform the councillor that if there is water on the toilet floor, it is dealt with very promptly by the carers. They are only too aware of the danger wet floors can present. The lounge area where we spend most of our time is clean and pleasant, and in the winter very warm and cosy. The carpets are in good condition and the seating is comfortable. We, the users of the day centre, are not looking for a state-of-the-art venue. We just want a comfortable, friendly place where we can meet and chat with people of similar age and interests. The hall is where we have our meals. This does look rather tired and shabby, but this is to be expected, as it must be a very long time since it has been decorated. This is, of course, due to the lack of maintenance by the Borough Council. I am somewhat concerned at what Councillor Graham Lawman had to say about Glamis Hall. It has already been spoken of. If I remember correctly, it was only a few months ago that both he and his wife partook of the hospitality of the day centre by attending one of our party days. Now, he and his wife are voting to close Glamis Hall, a real stab in the back and a great insult to both users and staff of the day centre. Thank you,
Betty.
Yeah, that's all right.
Thank you. Diane Clayton.
Diana, please.
Diana.
Right. Thank you. Good evening. We are all aware that the number of clients has been declining since the letters were given to the users of the impending closure. We are, however, also conscious of the fact that many other people wish to attend the day centre but are being turned away as Glamis Hall is not taking on any new clients. To demonstrate to the client how many potential clients there are in the borough, we carried out our own survey of potential users for the day centre and for the community centre. Small sample maybe, but 65 is not bad. 65 adults over 18 years living in Wellingborough was conducted. Questions related to themselves and their families, as many older people can't get out. It provides a cross-section of ages, gender and working status. The results show that total awareness of Glamis Hall was 89%. This is not surprising given the recent publicity of the day centre for over 50s in the media and on the street. The surprisingly high, very likely to use figure of just over 40% proves that there is both a short-term and long-term need for an over 50s day centre in Wellingborough. This may not accurately reflect the immediate short-term requirement and should not be used for extrapolation purposes, but certainly indicates the longer-term need and also the desire of the public to keep the centre open. The primary need is seen as for mothers, fathers and grandparents, but of the total sample, 1 in 5 of individuals would be very likely to use the facility personally, a good measure of current demand. I have more information here, and which I can provide in the future, of the services required, and this is available on request. There is a high percentage of just over 3/4 of the sample who would personally like to see services available for all ages. And this suggests that there is a clear need for a good community centre such as Glamis Hall in Wellingborough. This could provide a significant source of income for the council. Again, I have more details of these services that are required. Graham has mentioned some of them. In conclusion, we strongly feel that Glamis Hall should be updated and its services expanded, not only to the over 50s, but to all sections of the community. I will answer questions if you require. Further questions and requests for information from the survey should be addressed to our chairman, Heather Saunders. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, I'll try and get this right. It's Rosie Newbiggin.
Yes, well done. It's Scottish. Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I'm Rosie Newbiggin. I'm the Chief Executive of Healthwatch Northamptonshire. Healthwatch Northamptonshire is a statutory organisation established to speak up and champion the needs of the whole of the population of Northamptonshire in relation to health and social care. And we have significant statutory powers to ensure that the voice of local people is heard in relation to decisions around health and social care. We also have the power to escalate matters of concern to our national organisation, Healthwatch England, if we feel that the needs, views and opinions of local people aren't being effectively taken into account. So I just really wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about some national and local policy context, because I think the campaign has set out, or is setting out, the very local factors. I mean, I think we all know that the numbers of older people, we are all living longer. And a House of Lords inquiry in 2013 concluded that we are woefully underprepared for a real explosion in the numbers of older people. And Northamptonshire is no exception to that. We are the second fastest growing county in the country. And the House of Lords inquiry estimated that between 2010 and 2013, there will be a 50% increase in the number of people aged 65 or older, and a doubling of the number of very elderly people aged 85 or over. Alongside that, health and social care services are being implored to keep people out of hospital, support people in their own homes for longer, work closely alongside health, social care, leisure facilities, other facilities in local communities. So in fact, we need more facilities like Glamis Hall, not fewer, and I think it's all credit to the community that they're coming together, working in partnership. This is the kind of community empowerment that actually health and social services really want to see, so that we take control of our own health. And there is currently a programme going on within Northamptonshire. There's a huge funding gap that the health and social care economy has to close. But the strapline for that programme is healthier, happier, longer. Now, I've read and heard from some of the people, the service users and carers who use Glamis Hall, and I think you can't hear those stories without being really moved. But I think what's really clear is that it's a very cost-effective service in terms of keeping people out of hospital, avoiding early admission to residential or nursing care, and really supporting people to tackle the key issues amongst older people like loneliness, depression and isolation. That's the biggest risk factor for older people's health currently. So in conclusion, I'd encourage you to support the recommendations from the local campaign, find a sustainable way of continuing the services. There are lots of creative options. Health Watch Northamptonshire, for example, is a community enterprise. We're a community interest company. There's lots of support around, lots of access to funding. And I think, finally, I think the motto of the council is forward together. I think together we could make a really important, or rather you could make a really important decision tonight to really demonstrate to the local community that you do want to move forward together and keep Glamis Hall open. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, speakers. I'll now go on to the officers' update report. Have you anything to add to your report, please?
I said I would update you in the report. We have the report from the NHS clinicians on Glamis Hall. The report has only been finalised today. As members will know, it couldn't be published earlier because it wasn't completely finished, but I did send members of the Resources Committee a draft of it on Friday, so you've had time to read through it, hopefully. Whilst the day centre isn't subject to Care Quality Commission inspections, we were advised by the clinicians that the most sensible approach would be to compare the standards at Glamis Hall with the standards required for care at home. So that's how the inspection is carried out. There are a few key points that have come out of that report, which I think it's important to summarise for tonight, because they're the things that probably need greatest concern. Whose commitment can't be questioned, and that there was certainly no suggestion that the staff were not doing a good job. They're doing an excellent job. But there are some concerns, immediate concerns, that we need to address as a council. We need to look at the bathing facilities, because we can't continue with those until the staffing levels are increased and there's a deep clean and refurbishment of the bathroom. There's a general deep clean and declutter needed for the whole building in order to comply with health and safety and fire legislation. There are some issues around archiving of records for our staff, which we need to have a look at. And we need to look at some of our documentation to make sure that it meets modern standards. The final point is that we need to provide some further training for our staff. Those are the important immediate issues. You will have seen the report, which will go public now that it's been finalised. But there are a number of issues that we do need to look at. So that was the first thing that I wanted just to add to the report, as I've made mention in Appendix 7. The second point, which will I'm hoping be of use to you, is I've arranged for evaluation of Glamis Hall, the building and the car park. I think this is important that we have this, so that if you do decide to work with a third party, whoever that is, whether it's via a sale or a community asset transfer, that you need to know what the valuation of the building is. I can't give you figures here now because they'll be commercial in confidence, but I did ask for 3 valuations so that you're aware of what I've already asked for. The first thing would be as a going concern, which we can't get a figure for because it's not a going concern, it makes a loss. The second would be if we were to sell the building or to transfer it as to provide community facilities, as we have at the moment, something by way of comparison, just so that you have all the figures and not suggesting that this is the way you would go, how much the valuation would be if it went onto the open market. So I have that information if members do need it at some point later in the meeting. So, but as a general rule of thumb, I understand from our valuers that if you were to sell the land and buildings for community facilities, then that would bring in about half the amount that would be realised for land if land was sold for housing or another purpose. But as I've mentioned in the report earlier on, if you do decide to sell, then obviously the proceeds, you could make a decision about ploughing the proceeds of the sale back into the community to provide care and support. So those are just the two updates I wanted to give you. Thank you.
Train anyone, can't you? Easy. Chairman, thank you. It's a point of clarification, really, and I have read the report, and it's, well, I think other members may wish to speak on it, but it doesn't make happy reading, and it does make some conclusions which Mrs. Lawrence has identified, and particularly about the bathing. There's a mention about we shouldn't be bathing without a hoist, but I don't want to go into those specifics. Is it the opinion of the officers, Chairman, that some of these recommendations are quite urgent and will require fairly immediate repairs?
It seems fairly clear to me from the report that we do need to take some action immediately. As I said, the report's only been finalised today. I have taken action to deal with one or two of the more basic issues like decluttering and cleaning, etc. But if we're going to do something more significant, such as refurbishment or some of the other points like reflooring, then yes, I think that's quite important from the health and safety point of view.
If I may, just at this stage, a question for clarification only. I just really want to be clear, because I'm not sure I know, and I'm sure other people in the room don't know, what the direct consequences of our decision made at the start of this meeting in respect of recommendation 4.1 actually mean for the operation of Glamis Hall. So I understand that we have now set aside our decision to close. Does that mean that the status quo is now back in place? And in particular, have any at-risk notices been withdrawn, or will they be withdrawn in respect of staff, us having now made the decision? And will the centre start taking new referrals again, which it clearly hasn't been doing?
As I understand, it depends on what decisions you make tonight, Councillor Scarborough.
All right, let me take it on. In the event that we were not to decide in favour of the option that apparently now remains to revisit the closure later on, I think it's option B, is it, or something, that we would decide that there needed to be a future under one ownership or other or whatever for Glamis Hall, what would the what are the implications of the decision we've just made?
You sound like a good lawyer tonight, Mr. Councillor Scott. Nothing could happen. I think you've got probably status quo for a fortnight, because full council have to rectify or confirm any decision this committee makes. So it would be unlikely that we would go back to taking referrals tonight to full council made a decision in a fortnight's time. Right.
So in essence, anything we do, that's fine, as long as we all understand that. Yeah. Anything we do tonight is essentially provisional,
subject to full council
in 2 weeks'
on the 7th of
October. That's entirely fine, as long as everybody understands that. That's right. Great.
So if no one isn't clear, any decision taken tonight is subject to confirmation by full council on the 7th of October 2015. Thank you. 14. I'm corrected. It's been a long day. Councillor Harrington, and then I'll come to Councillor Henley.
I'd just like to clarify from Mrs. Lawrence. In the original estimate for short life extension, 10 years, we were looking at probably an expenditure of around 133,000, but that obviously didn't include the floor. We now know that the floor is almost likely or would need to be replaced. Am I right in assuming that?
I understand from the infection control nurse that we would have to replace the flooring because it's holding dirt at the moment, which we need to get rid of, and we need to make sure that that's all cleaned up so that there's no chance of infection spreading. So yes.
That would be rather expensive, I would have thought.
I don't know. I really don't know because we don't have any quotations. I think it's something that we're probably going to have to look at doing whatever happens now.
Councillor Henley.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, a clarification point, and then probably a comment, I think. So has Appendix 7 changed since the report we were sent last week? You said you got the final report today. Is there any changes from that report?
The only thing that's happened is, as I've mentioned earlier on, we've got just a summary of points at the end. It's literally those points I mentioned that have been highlighted by the nurse clinician at the end, because I've asked for the key points to be pulled out of it.
Okay. In that case, I'm going to go to my general comment. I'm bewildered at the moment, if I'm honest, given the fact that we're talking about valuations, but we can't talk about valuations because we haven't got any numbers, and we haven't got the confidential numbers. And I'm conscious that there's 10 of us in this room who've got a report, and everyone else around the room has got no bloody clue what we're talking about. So, one of the things that when we said 2 weeks ago that 2 weeks was not enough time, this was exactly the sort of shambles that we were predicting. Because, I'm sorry, but this is... Sorry, I wasn't hoping for...
No, you always say that, but don't worry about it.
We clearly said that we wanted all the papers out in full discussion, and everyone agreed that, but we've got a situation whereby tonight, not even the other councillors have received them, only the resources, according to the email that we saw last week. So I'm guessing even our colleagues in the bodyguard section behind us don't have a clue what's going on. So I'm bewildered as to how we're expecting the public to make decisions based on a report that they haven't seen.
Okay. Do you want to...
With all due respect, I sent the information to... I've made reference to the report already in Appendix 7, so I've given you a very brief summary of what was expected, and it hasn't really changed from that. All I've given you is more detail. And again, with respect, it is the committee who are making the decision rather than the public. So I would have thought that maybe was enough for members to consider the discussion tonight and to make an informed decision. And in terms of the evaluations, yes, I can give you the figures, but it would have to be in confidence. We'd have to move into private session to do that because of the commercial aspect of the information.
Okay. Any more questions or comments? You've gone very quiet. I'm supposed to be talking about a future or something.
Well, if I may, Chairman, come back on that point that Councillor Henley raised and stress the point that I believe I've got sufficient information. I've had sufficient information. I've had additional information that other members of this committee have had that the public are probably not aware of. But that's the way council works. And I certainly believe I've got enough information, and having listened to the speakers tonight, to make a decision. I don't see a problem with that at all.
Thank you. Councillor Holloman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too have that information that all my colleagues have here tonight. It's an independent report generated by NHS Arden Commission in Support Inspection for Care Facilities, and with all due respect to the staff who have been praised extremely highly in this report, it's a pretty damning indictment on the building and the service. I appreciate that the public don't have this information in their domain at the moment, but it will become obviously apparent as it's circulated in due course that the fabric of the building of Glamis Hall has seen better days, and it would appear that we will just be throwing good money after bad by attempting to try and resuscitate it. I think it's important that we look at each individual recommendation in isolation. So my comments at this moment in time are solely confined to the fabric of the building. But it seems to me that we're just throwing good money after bad into a building which is not fit for purpose, and there are better outcomes for the users of this facility.
You can't speak, so it's councillors only. I'm sorry, sir, it's not permitted. It's councillors only now. Any other councillor wishes to speak? Councillor Harrington?
I think the speaker who inspired me most, actually, was Rosie Newbigging, because she spoke about services. We've got to really do everything that we can to preserve the services. Whether the building has to close or not, the services are what we have a responsibility for. We have a responsibility because we accepted those responsibilities many years ago. So I think that needs to be emphasised. As long as we can carry on providing services, that is the number one issue, not whether the building is far too old to stay open or whatever it may or may not be. The services is what we should be looking to observe.
Thank you. I'll go Councillor Scarborough and Councillor Holloman.
Thank you, Chairman. It's true. It's undoubtedly true that we have had a good deal more information. I think the major problem I have at this stage with confirming a particular option, although if I'm forced to choose an option, I have a preference. My major problem with confirming any particular option is that we have yet to explore with the Save Glamis Hall for All committee the proposal that they worked up and placed before us at the time of full council. I said at full council that we owed those protesting against this closure at least that, and I stick with that. Now, whether those discussions can produce a productive outcome is a matter for that period of discussion, it seems to me. But at the very least, in taking this forward, before we close down a range of options, I would have thought we need to be sitting down and talking actively and constructively with the Save Glamis Hall for All committee. Now, it looks like if we're forced to choose options, the only way to achieve that is to mark option D as our preferred approach. I would prefer to have a much more open recommendation that says we sit down with the Save Glamis Hall for All committee first to work through their proposals, and then and only then do we close down options. It's really picking up the point that Councillor Henley was making. We've done a great many things since this was deferred, but we haven't actually done the one thing that is most important, which is sit down with the people who have gained a substantial mandate through the work they've done in terms of gathering signatures for their petition, and who have taken the trouble to study this issue more than any other group of people in this room, I suspect, than our council officers. We really should be sitting down with the Save Glamis Hall for All committee. Now, if in order to achieve that, the officers are asking us to say, we go for option D, if that's what they're telling us, then that's what we have to do. But in doing so, I think we would have to then understand that given the difficulties with the building, given the difficulties with some of the care that have been identified, both of which I believe can be fixed, incidentally. I thought Mrs Lawrence was very fair about the report from the health professionals. Most of those things can be fixed relatively easily to bring services up to a much higher standard. But given that there are those issues to be worked through, I don't think simply saying we transfer the building to the Save Glamis Hall for All committee, now get on with it, guys, is the right solution for the council. I hope that's not what option D intends. I hope what's intended is a detailed and sensible discussion with that committee. But I'm very loath to leap to solutions tonight, or recommended solutions, because, as I say, we haven't done everything we needed to do to reach that position.
Thank you. Just to clarify, Councillor, there are two other organisations also interested, and I assume you would be favouring negotiations with all interested parties, or unless you specify we only talk to one. But we'll leave that. And the other point is, Councillor, it's up for you to tell us which options you want to go forward as a committee. Councillor Holloman.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to Councillor Scarborough for getting ahead of us on the agenda items, and I fully understand his reasons for that. It would appear that we're proposing a recommendation on the building without actually discussing with interested parties alternative solutions, but that's not the case. I think the officers have structured this in such a way that it's aiding us in making incremental decisions. But as far as I'm concerned, the building is one decision. In 4.2a, the provision of the daycare facilities is a completely different decision, but linked to the building in 4.2b, and we'll be inviting comments from all councillors about how we can best continue to provide services for the users of Glamis Hall.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Graves.
Thank you, Chairman. And I have sympathy with a lot that Councillor Scarborough said, and I hope that is going to be part of the ongoing debate. And you've indicated Chair and the Vice Chair have the same thing. I think one thing leads to another. But with respect, I did ask a question initially about addressing this inspection, which Councillor Henley sort of says is almost dismissed. It's a vital document. You do have the full facts. Maybe it's not here for the members of the public to see.
I was going to say, I'm not. I did. Clarification. Point of order. Clarification. I did not dismiss the report. I just said that we promised that we would do it all in public with full details, and that's not what we've done.
Okay.
Thank you.
But it is, to me, it's the most significant report about the whole decision tonight. And I did ask the question, and people are ignoring what is the elephant in the room. Not even hypothetically, factually, if we have to address those issues, whether it's now or at the time of full council or when winter sets in, we as a responsible landlord will have to address those items and those issues. And what happens to the clients then? They stay at home, and I don't know, and you don't know, Chairman, how long those repairs could take. We could say we could do a deep clean over the weekend. I'm not so sure we could. We've got to put down new flooring, possibly. We haven't even got a supplier yet. We've got to put a hoist in, £500, £600 to get that installed. We're talking about a significant amount of time. Where are the clients going to go in the meantime? And I am concerned about that. I'm not making objections. People are laughing in the gallery. It's a fact of life. And we have identified spaces for every one of those clients. In fact, I believe 110 or so have actually volunteered the fact they would like to leave Glamis Hall and go to these alternate accommodation.
Sorry, I did ask at the beginning. You may not agree, but councillors at least had the courtesy to listen to you inquire. I'll ask you to repay. If you don't like what's been said, as a colleague said once, you can always leave, but do not barrack. It's not good for democracy. You may not agree with it. Thank you. Carry on, Councillor.
Oh, well, I've virtually finished. We cannot, obviously, force or coerce anybody to go to another facility. All we can do is to say to you, there it is. I think there are 12 or 13 providers who can take people in. One can take up to 10. Others can individually. There will be a choice. There will be a menu. And surely it's better to say, right, I'd like my mum or dad to go there rather than stay at home or maybe not have a service at all. In the meantime, and I am venturing into the next stage, Chair, and I apologise, I agree entirely with Councillor Scarborough. We should meet with the action group from Save Glamis Hall. We should meet with the 3 or 4 other people, because Maybe that is the solution to saving it, but we haven't heard any tangible proposals from the Action Group. I'm sorry, we've seen their outline proposal. We really need to see some meat on the bone. One of the speakers talked about raising substantial amounts of money. The proposal I saw was the council acting as a cash cow and providing the money. So I think we do need to have a lot of discussions going forward on what happens to the services.
Thank you. Councillor Griffiths, sorry.
Thank you, Leader. When we start to struggle at meetings, it's sometimes best to look back a little bit. And every one of us, less than 2 years ago, had a very important meeting with the financial directors of the council. And it was that we had some very difficult decisions to make and some savings to be made. We didn't want to have to make those savings, but we're in that position now. Now, I cast my mind also back to the extraordinary meeting where one of the speakers, Mr. Page, I think it was, said, this has been going on now for 2 years. And he's right, it has. What surprises me a little bit, and I know a little bit about protest groups because I became a councillor as a result of one. Why has it taken this long for the Action Group to start progressing this and discussing this with the council? A lot of these things could have been achieved sooner. What it basically is, it's turned into a political situation, and I might not be popular for saying that, but that is what I believe has happened. We now have a damning report on the building. It is unsafe. We have a demoralised staff doing a tremendous job up there, but they are clearly demoralised. And the two things really worry me, Leader, to the extent that I really do not think there is any alternative but to close Glamis Hall sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Please. Thank you. I did ask you for quiet. Please respect someone to speak.
I knew this would get the meeting going a bit.
No need to
that is the case. And I say that with heavy heart because when I voted for this originally at the original resources meeting, it was on the basis, and it's minuted and it was heard, that outcomes are found for all of the users of the facility. And that is the key issue, outcomes. A lot of them will be improved outcomes. Now, the report clearly shows that 6 people in my ward use Glamis Hall. For those of you who don't know, I'm in Croydon ward. And I can think of 60, maybe 160, 260 vulnerable people that live in my ward. Now, should we... I'm asking this question, I'm not giving you the answer, but should we provide a considerable additional expense for the 130-odd people, the 6 people from my ward, and not progress the interests of the other people? That is the question that I'm asking. I found very interesting the comment that was made from, was it Health, the lady from Health Watch. Totally agree with what she is saying, but really she needs to be addressing this to the County Council. The funding for these things, like it or not, the funding for these things are a county council issue. We have not got the funding or resources. So I think first decision, and we'll get on to the other items, because I think there's a lot that can be done there. Dare I say this is the comments that were made by Heather earlier, a little bit big society. And I think there's something that can be achieved there. But let us get moving on and make the first decision. We've got a report in front of us that clearly shows the building has passed its sell-by date. We need to achieve better outcomes for the people that are there. let's make a decision on the first point and then move on to the more positive things. I'm afraid I will be voting in favour of the closure of Glamis Hall.
Thank you. Any more comments? Councillor Henley?
Thank you, Chair. I seem to be doing points of clarification tonight. Just so we're clear, Martin, on page 27 you had 14 users from Croyland. I'm not 6, but it's, I admit that's not many, but it's still 14. And Councillor Graves said that over 100 said they were, I think his phrase was, happy to go should they leave. The question they were asked was, when Glamis Hall closes, they would like to go somewhere different that might offer similar services. Now, I'm sorry, but that's not, do you want to go somewhere else other than Glamis? Because that would be and that wasn't the question we asked. And I think we know why we didn't ask that question.
Thank you, Councillor Graves.
Interesting how one certain member placed the gallery loves the applause. It's playing with words. They had the opportunity to turn around and say, no way would I go somewhere else. They were quite happy to go somewhere else if the building closed. At the moment, well, you might find out later.
Thank you. I did ask you, please, can we just carry on? You may not like it, but I did set the ground rules at the beginning. Councillors listen to you with respect. I'm asking you to do the same. You may not agree with the decision, but that's how I want to run the meeting. Thank you. Councillor Scarborough.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. We know a lot more now than we knew some months ago. We know a bit more than we knew at the time of the special council meeting. But the single biggest thing that I know now that I didn't know at the time of the initial resources meeting is that the people of Wellingborough, in very, very, very large numbers, clearly value the continued delivery of this service from its current location, and that the Save Glamis Hall for All group have pulled that view out of the people of Wellingborough, almost, I have to say, except by being there and being articulate, almost without having to try. Anybody who's been in the town centre has seen the people queuing up to sign the petition. So the thing we know above all is the value that the people of this town and this borough place on the continuation of this service. That is the single biggest thing none of us knew when this recent process started. Now, we also know that although it will cost money, that Glamis Hall can be put in a state where it can continue to operate effectively. Deep cleaning, I have to say, doesn't take very long. I think many of the other things identified as improvements to the building needed for health, safety and therapeutic activity merely need to be the subject of a planned action plan, frankly. They don't all need to be done tomorrow. Things like the floor replacement, short-term deep clean, long-term replace with a more easily cleanable and sterilisable surface. Long-term, by long-term I don't mean 3 years' time. That can be done 3, 6, 9 months, a year into the future. The Glamis Hall building is not great, but we know from the work of our own surveyors and property people that it can be put into order to keep it going for another 10 years. That's what our papers tell us. They tell us it will cost some money to do that, and we've just had an additional bill added by the care inspectors. But it undoubtedly can be done. And it can be done at a cost that the borough can undoubtedly, if it chooses to, find. I know our reserves are diminishing, but they are still substantial, both in terms of capital and revenue. So this money can be found if the borough has the will to find it. In the long run, a revised, in many ways better, perhaps in some cases it will have to be more restricted service, can continue to be offered from the building, particularly if we have the goodwill of the community fundraising and tapping in to other sources of funds that are increasingly available for health and well-being work. The points made by Rosie from Health Watch Northants are extremely well made. I would hope that our representatives, both on the County Council and on the local health and wellbeing partnership, would have something to say about the funds that may well be available. Those of us who are not involved in those things find it more difficult to speak. But this can undoubtedly be done. There is there is a will in the community to help us with this. There is a will from a wide range of professionals. We heard from Health Watch tonight. We heard from the local doctors at the last meeting. Clearly a wide range of professionals, not just the public in general, but professionals in the field want this service to continue. It is a matter, frankly, of the will of the council to do it. Now, you can ask me if you like, why should the council exercise that will to do it? And I'll tell you why. It's because the people have told us that that is what they want us to do. It's as simple as that.
Do you want to carry on, Councillor Scarborough? Oh, thank you.
That was my peroration. wasn't looking we don't usually get it in this chamber, you have to say.
All right, I'll go to Councillor Carr now because he hasn't spoken.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I'm perhaps one of the youngest ones sitting here. Yes, 40 years' time, I shall be of the age of some of the users of Glamis Hall. Yes, I've had family members and friends of the family who've used Glamis Hall as well. Having spent many hours rereading through the documentations that the officers have kindly prepared for us, I've got grave concerns about the building, I must admit. I'm not a building expert, and I do have to rely on officers' advice and recommendations on things. The point that Councillor Scarborough has made about working with the community, I think, is a very key thing with this. And if we turn back in time to the Resources Committee, which took place in June, a recommendation was given to us in regards to closing the building and looking at other available resources, places for those users. Obviously, if any work is undertaken on the building, and this has been mentioned before, but I just want to reiterate it, the building will have to close for a period of time, and those users will have to be found other places to go, because I'm sure they don't want to sit at home in those four walls, which is, again, is reiterated. I do have slight concerns about the petition which was given. Well done on collecting so many signatories, but was information actually given to the general public about the options that this council were considering? Because obviously, as a councillor, I've had several people come to me saying this is disgraceful, this is great concerns, but when I've explained to them that the council were looking at other options and were considering other options and waiting for paperwork to come to this meeting for us as councillors to make further decisions on, their line slightly changed. So I think that there are various ways forwards with this. Yes, there's opportunity perhaps to work with groups like, say, Glamis Hall and others to move things forward. But it still comes back to the three basic issues that we have ahead of us. One is the building, two is the service, and three, obviously, is the other users of that building outside of the day centre. So we need to break that down as councillors to look at those three aspects.
Thank you, Councillor Holloman.
I'll defer to my colleague.
Councillor Griffiths, and I'll come to Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Leader. I'm glad the petition was mentioned because I came in yesterday to have a look at this document, and I went through it, and it is quite a healthy load of signatures and paperwork. But I agree with Councillor Carr. I don't think that 10,000 people knew what they were signing. I know, if you just listen to me, I know that for a fact because I saw it being signed outside Barclays Bank, in Morrison's, outside Sainsbury's. And I also heard some of the people that were queuing up to sign it, and one young mum turned to another young mum and said, "What's this all about then?" And she said, "Oh, you've got to sign this. The council are going to close an old age people's home." And that's what she said, and that's what she believed. If you look at the wording on the petition, it's a lot more than just the closure of Glamis Hall. So I have concerns, and I believe if you put those 10,000, possibly it's more, 8,500 when you take the people that don't live in this borough, and the duplications and the young people that were on there, that if you took those aside and sat them down and gave them all the facts and the financial figures, they may well, I'm not saying they would, but they may well come to a different conclusion. What this actually is a political campaign that has been done very, very well by a parliamentary candidate that didn't even know where Glamis Hall was until he came on.
Councillor, just stop. I have asked you to listen. You may not agree, but this is. I know you don't. Yes, sir.
Surely you must control a councillor that doesn't know what he's talking about.
If you... Sir, sir, would you stop talking, please? I've said at the beginning.
You should be all bitterly ashamed of yourself.
Thank you, sir.
If I may continue.
I shall repeat my... Thank you. I shall repeat my... Thank you.
Especially, you're in Bell, you're a wrecker.
Thank you. Sir, I told you I'm not asking you to speak. Please sit down. You're not permitted to speak. Thank you. You can go and tell Mr. Bone afterwards if you like. Now, I've asked at the beginning, I keep stressing this. You may not be happy with what's said by councillors. They had the courtesy to listen to you. I ask you to at least have the courtesy to listen to them. You don't have to agree with them, but they at least listen to your point of view. This is why we have a democracy. You see, you're not prepared to listen. Councillors may speak as long as they're required to in here. That's what the Constitution says. You may not like it.
Not in May, they won't.
Well, in May's May.
We speak the truth. We want to listen to the truth. That's all we want.
Not lies. That's all we've heard.
If you continue, I will suspend the meeting, Mr. Campbell. I'll ask you to leave. It's as simple as that. Right, carry on, Councillor.
I take
Good night.
I take grave objection to being called a liar. Thank you. Goodbye.
Carry on, please, Councillor.
As I said.
Thank you. Carry on, Councillor.
It's well maintained.
Thank you.
I've had my say too.
Councillor, carry on, please.
As I say, this is a political campaign. It has been conducted through a parliamentary candidate who has done an excellent job at raising an issue and getting the most political gain out of it. And all credit to him. He didn't even know where Glamis Hall was when he came on a whistle-stop tour of this town some 6 or 7 months ago. And come next May, I suspect that he will...
All right, would you speak quiet, please? Please speak. Thank you. Are you want to run the meeting or are you going to let me carry on? Thank you. I think, Councillor, we can stop at that point on that.
Well, let's move on with the decision then, Chairman.
No, I'll have councillors to speak. I've got Councillor Graves next. Then I'll come to Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chairman. I will try and, well, I always do, speak the truth. I'd like to try and help Councillor Scarborough, but I think he knows the answer on funding. The County Council, and I made this point at the extraordinary meeting, they withdrew or threatened to withdraw their funding for a building-based daycare over 2 years ago, and they've now done it. They opened a tender in April, and somebody in this borough will receive £1 million for 4 years to set up a partnership to deal with adults and specifically older people. That, I don't know who that's going to be. The results will be known in the second week of October. That is a considerable amount of money. But the tender specifically says to provide a wide range of services for as many people as possible. Now, I know the 100 and it's going down, I don't know what it is at the moment, let's call it 150, but I think it's near 130, are important. I know they're important, but they can benefit from what's happening. If the action group would listen, they listen to the truth about the building. If you put the same energies into, we haven't even come to it yet, perpetuating a service, and we are going to work with you, hopefully.
Can I ask you to respect... We're not going to get further if you keep butting in.
There are lots of opportunities, or will be lots of opportunities. I personally have spoken to partners in this new partnership. They are looking at new facilities. They may not be around in the next couple of weeks, but they will certainly be around in the next 6 months. And there are great opportunities for a great more people than attend Glamis Hall. And I agree with what Heather Saunders said. What we need is a building that can accommodate more people than there are at Glamis Hall, and a wider range of services. Why not have children's services in there? Why not have Meals on Wheels? Why not have a community transport? You can't do that in Glamis Hall, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Diacre, sorry, kept you waiting.
Thank you, Chairman. I had no intention of speaking again, but I think during my 25 years of councillorship here, I think I have never, ever seen anything like this before. The support for one item is just enormous, and I think that is something that we ought to recognise. Whether we believe or not, we recognise that there are people out there that wants to talk to us. They want to change our decisions that we thought was going to be right at the time. In the new information that's come through, I think that has changed our thoughts. It certainly has changed my thoughts. The thing that made me speak is Councillor Griffiths. I think he says about difficult decisions had to be made, savings had to be made. Why have the pressure group taken so long to come to it? If I can answer those questions, difficult decisions, yes, we have to make difficult decisions. Cutbacks had to be made, but there are consequences of those cuts. He uses the words about politics. Yes, we are using politics in here, but not the political P with capital P. We're playing with lives, the quality of life for elders. Mr. Chairman, where I'm coming from, my culture says, you respect your elders. And I'm afraid that is something that we are trying here not to do. I think, having seen some of these older people around, and I think Betty Ashton, I saw her after a long, long time. You know, I felt really sort of gutted to see Betty, the person I knew for a few years, has come to a situation where I can't help her. Why has it taken them too long? Because it's only recently they have been made aware of what the decision's been. So that's why they have. And can I just ask, I think they could be asking us the question. The independent report says a few things, and I think the summary really highlights that, you know, that there are good and fantastic team of people, dedicated staff working there. And it also goes on to say it's insufficient level of staffing there. You know, that's perhaps an issue that we need to look at. Record keeping is not required, or is not as to the required standards. You know, and I could go on. So why did we not do? Why did we not do anything about it at that time? Why hasn't that been brought to our attention? Now that the building has become dilapidated, you know, it's probably sell by its use date. That's where we are getting involved. As landlords, as owner of this place, we should have done it. And I think one of the key things for me is the independent report says there is a need to invest and to improve the fabric of the building. And here we are. We have an opportunity, you know, to do that. We've got groups of people who are willing to work with us. What we are trying to do is, yes, we've listened to it, thank you, but no thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I've listened twice now to the people. Can I just have a clarification, Chair, because some of the comments that have been made, I just wonder whether these people have actually seen the report that we've got here tonight. Because if they haven't, I can understand their comments. And it's sad, and I don't know if it's possible, I might be talking out of turn here, please tell me if I am, but I think it's so important that these people actually see this document. Because there's so much good stuff in here, it doesn't need to be thrown away. It needs to be acted on. And I'm just wondering, through the officer, is this going to happen or not happen? Because if it isn't going to happen, I might as well shut up.
Just to clarify, the report you've got there has gone out. It's in the public arena. Everyone will have seen it. The only thing that the members of the public have not seen is the one I sent you from the NHS on Friday.
Right. Okay. Yes. So people actually have seen the document.
It's only the clinician's report that they've not seen. And I did summarise the outcomes of that in Appendix 7, but not the details. I didn't have.
No, fair enough. But the
rest of it, yes.
The core of it is here. That's fine. That's good. Because that does surprise me, because if people have read this report, I'm surprised at some of the comments have been made. Because some of us, and I'm a county councillor that actually sit on the county council for the elderly people, and have done for many years, are working very hard to improve the situation, not for the people of today, but also for the people of tomorrow. And if you look around Wellingborough now, hopefully you can see some of those improvements coming through. I'll take you to Knight's Court in Gold Street. You've seen the multi-million-pound development that's happened there through the situation. Go along Northampton Road, where the old pub was, and you'll see another development going on. All these things are happening. It takes time and effort. The trouble is with Glamis Hall, it's been a great place, but now I'm afraid we have to move to the next stage. We really have to move to the next stage.
Councillor, you're supposed to be talking to me, not the demonstrator.
Sorry, I thought I was, Chair.
No, you were looking at...
Was I? Oh, I do apologise.
It's the mayor
I'll look straight
here.
in your eye then, Chair, and you'll know what I'm talking about, won't you? Thank you very much. So I believe, Chair, there's a lot of work being done, a lot of work to be done, and I think that what we need to do is sit down, sort this out once and for all, and go forward, because that's what our motto is. Wellingborough, go forward together. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Holloman.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to make a recommendation, if I may. We've had a very robust discussion. New information has come to light. There's been a free and frank exchange of views. But what I'd like to say is that if we pull everyone back to the proposed actions and the recommendations, if we take them in isolation, please be reassured that what we're talking about is a provision of a service in a building in 4.2a, and in 4.2b we're talking about providing a service for the users of Glamis Hall, possibly in alternative locations but not exclusively. It's just far easier to deal with this in a piecemeal basis. So I'd like to move a recommendation that Wellingborough Borough Council ceases daycare facilities at Glamis Hall with effect from the 31st of December 2014. Although I could be persuaded to enact emergency rectifications should the committee be minded to take the risk profile into account of the users of Glamis Hall using the building in its current state. But I won't complicate matters. The recommendation will stand. Do I have a seconder?
Sorry, Chair, when did he finish with the recommendation and when did he... I presume it was just to clarify, I presume when you stopped in 2014?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So you then carried on, so I just want to clarify. Yeah.
Do we have a seconder for the first part of this recommendation? Right. You have a recommendation that, if I understand it right, that Glamis Hall building be ceased to operate as a daycare centre as of the 31st of December 2014. Correct. Does anybody want to amend that? You could have a... We are prepped for recorded votes, but I think there's only part...
So we're essentially setting aside the decision we set aside.
You're making a recommendation to full council. Yeah, I think there's a brand new decision. The first part of this decision is to close the Glamis Hall building, but not the service.
Can I just clarify, Chair, please? Recommendation is to close at the end of the year, but with 4.2b, is that correct? The provision of daycare facilities.
I think all I have at the moment is a recommendation to close the bill, B. Now, I'm quite happy to take recommendations on B and C if you want to, or if you want to take one at a time.
Chairman, I'm in looking glass land here, I have to say, because the question I asked earlier was, having made the recommendation having decided to set aside our original decision, we were at the back of the stage where the status quo was applying, except that we weren't withdrawing the at-risk notices and we were still blocking any access of new clients to the centre. We're now at a stage where we've set aside, or we're recommending we unset aside that decision, but actually it makes no difference to what the council actually does. We go on doing what we were always planning to do, apparently, which is carry on with the closure. Looking glass land, colleagues, looking glass land.
Right, you have a proposal to close Glamis Hall as of the 31st of December 2014. That will be recommendation 4.2a. You want a recorded vote? Right. Bell for Holloman.
4.
Sorry? I'm going to have it recorded anyway. It's academic. I assume everybody wants it recorded. I'm told I've got to ask for 3 members. But yeah, we got it. Holloman.
4.
Allabone, who's not here. Carr. 4. Diakra. Yeah. Emerson's absent. Graves. 4. Griffiths. 4. Harrington.
The building to close, but not the services, 4.
Henley.
Against.
Morale. 4. Partridge Underwood's absent. Scarborough.
Against.
Ward.
4.
Waters. 4. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 for, 3 against and 3 absent. So 4.2b is carried. Right. 4.2a is carried. 4.2b, does anybody want to say anything on that? Go on, Councillor Graves.
Well, I would like to make the proposal, Chairman, that we explore with the users, with the action group, the possibility of those clients who, in the light after council, if this recommendation goes through at council, that the users who wish to take advantage of alternative temporary, and he said accommodation, but facilities with identified providers, that we should go down that course.
Right, and are you talking of entering negotiations?
Sorry, I'm proposing meeting with the action group and the clients, if the closure is confirmed at council, between now and the end of December, 3 months, to talk about where those clients can go as a temporary solution to hopefully a longer-term solution.
Councillor Holman.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to expand on that, if 4.2b is the right place to do it, by suggesting that we open negotiations in good faith with any interested parties that show a willingness to provide daycare facilities either at Glamis Hall or anywhere else that they see fit, to provide the right outcomes for the users of the centre.
Right.
Could I ask Councillor a point of clarification? He and his colleagues have just voted that we close Glamis Hall. He's now proposing it be reopened if we can find something. Now proposing it be reopened if someone else is prepared to take on the service. Because if that's the case, why wouldn't you simply keep it open while those negotiations take place and avoid disruption? I'm becoming increasingly confused. And for the first time in the whole history of this debate, I'm going to use the words that. I simply do not understand what the Conservative group on this council is thinking of in its confused, chaotic, uncaring and heartless approach to this problem. And that's the first time I've made this political. But I'll make it political now.
Sorry, I've got Councillor Holman and then Councillor Griffiths.
I don't see why Councillor Scarborough is confused. It's very simple, really. We are in a situation where we have a building which is past its economic life that requires substantial repairs. We also have a substantial budget deficit, a revenue deficit, of which Councillor Scarborough is well aware. Those are 2 figures that he will be aware of through previous resources committees and budget setting policies that we've undertaken. What we're suggesting is that if someone believes that through a community action or alternative funding methods they can provide a similar or better service, then we will enter into good faith with those organisations, provided they come up with a sensible business plan to negotiate the outcomes of those users. It's not particularly complicated. We have the Glamis Hall committee who have indicated a willingness to both take on the building and to take on the service. We have other third-party commercial interested parties, and we owe them a duty of care to prove to them that this is not a done deal. We have to be transparent, and we have to get best value for the taxpayer. So what we're suggesting is that in the intervening time, between the 7th of October and the 31st of December, that negotiations are entered into with all interested parties, but Glamis Hall will close with effect from the 31st of December in the absence of a formal agreement.
Councillor Griffiths.
Councillor Holliman has said most of what I was going to say. However, just a little addition, I really don't understand why Councillor Scarborough is confused, because the working party, which recommended that the Glamis Hall did close, was cross-party, and he had representatives on it. And one of the things they looked at was not only the outcomes of the users of the facility, which we are now discussing, but also the potential use for the site. What we're basically saying, let's put it into simple terms, we're possibly suggesting that we mothball the site for a period of time and look at the possibility of a scheme run by a group that may wish to approach us, and we'll listen to anybody, to come up with a scheme that will achieve the outcomes for not only the existing users of the facility, but hopefully a considerable increased number of people. But you've got to get the facilities that are provided right. Clearly, the facilities that we've been trying to provide do not fit with the existing building. What we've got to make sure is that the facilities that we're provided to any future facility, whether it be in the existing building done up or a new building on the same site, meets with the requirements of the people, but also health and safety legislation.
Thank you. We have a proposal. Do we have a seconder? Sorry, did I have a proposer? Do I have a seconder?
Second.
All right. Right, they're modified. Right, anybody want to amend that before we go to the vote?
I was going to ask a couple of questions for clarification.
Please. Clarification.
Given that so far our learned colleagues and the rest of the council haven't exactly been thrilled with our performance, and the fact they weren't happy that the previous time came to the main council as a resolution rather than a recommendation, and this time we're going with recommendation, I'm looking ahead and I'm a bit puzzled about timescales. Given we're talking end of the year, but the last council meeting is on the 9th, I presume full council would want to make that decision.
Sorry, you've even managed to confuse me.
Well, I'm just so we're all clear before we vote on anything, we're not talking to the end of the year if we're wanting full council to weigh in and make a decision. We're talking about, no, in terms of the negotiations and anything to come back for the council to make any decision. Well,
all right.
We were talking to. I just want to find a clear timescale here.
Councillor, I'm the chairman. I may not be a good chairman, or you may not like me. Councillor Griffiths is not chairing this meeting.
Agree.
Please speak to me. The clarification is any recommendation tonight goes to October's council meeting.
Agreed.
Now, October's council meeting may say we agree to that recommendation, but we want to report back in November. I don't know, but that's up to the October's council meeting.
Okay, because it's not clear so far from what council. I'm not entirely sure actually who moved the proposal in the end.
Yeah.
But I'm not entirely. There wasn't a clear timescale. There was talk about till the end of the year, but I don't think we have the authority to make a decision.
You are making a recommendation to full council. It has the authority to make. It may wish to amend that authority at full council on the 7th of October.
Okay. Right.
So you can recommend to full council, you enter into negotiations with interested parties and to provide temporary accommodation while you're in the negotiations. Because at some point, Glamis Hall's got to be closed, and it is going to be closed as a recommendation, while the refurbishment works out. Right. Anybody want to... Councillor Carr.
Can I just ask something, Mr. Chairman? If this decision's made, does that mean no interested parties can speak to officers at the council between now and the 7th of October in regards to the kind of offer that they might be able to provide?
I can see no reason, unless members disagree, that why officers can't start talking tomorrow morning on an informal basis so they know what's going forward. Councillor Morel.
I think what a lot of people seem to be missing on the point is that whatever happens to this building, it is going to close either to be repaired and to be put into a fit state to be used, or it's going to be closed and the daycare is going to go elsewhere. Now, whenever that happens, at this point, we're making the decision that will happen early in the new year, that it will close. In the time between now and then, it's quite sensible that we can find ways and means, and the Save Glamis Hall committee has a chance to see what costs, what money they're going to have available to repair this building. But equally, the people who are attending it at the moment have found alternative temporary accommodation, are in as happy a situation as they can be, and I understand they would prefer status quo, but status quo, regrettably, isn't an option. The building is an unsafe building. I know that building for the last 30 years.
Can I just stop you? And let's clarify this. At no point does any report say the building is unsafe.
Sorry, I'll take that back.
Thank you.
I'll take that back that it's not unsafe. It is need of a lot of structural and other repair.
It actually says in the report, Councillor, it is the end of its economic working life.
Correct.
Let's leave it at that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. I have a proposal second. Does anybody want to amend this, or are you happy? Well, you're not asking to be happy, but we go to the
Can we
vote.
just for clarity, can we reread it?
If I
please?
sort of summarise it as I understand it, 4.2b, that temporary daycare facilities be provided by the Borough Council for alternative users, and that we enter into negotiations with...
Are you really suggesting that the Borough Council provides that temporary?
Wrong word, all right. That alternative temporary care... We're splitting hairs over words. All right, let's get it.
Can I help? Sorry.
Yes, let's...
That temporary accommodation be sought for those clients who wish to take it up with a range of various providers in the borough.
I'll then take Councillor Holman's bit that we enter into negotiations with interested parties to run the daycare facilities. So, as far as I'm concerned, I'm happy for officers, if the Chief Executive can start negotiations tomorrow, unless anybody's violently objecting.
Chair, just so it's clear, because we were talking earlier about doing it after the count, then we talked about, so I just want to clarify.
And in terms of the temporary arrangements, when are they expected to come into effect, and how long are they expected to run for?
Well, I think if we're looking, you'll be looking for the 1st of January 2015, as long as it takes to get the building refurbished by all interested parties.
And right, so I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, I know it's getting very complicated.
The purpose of this amendment. I understand the bit about we should, having made the decision by majority that we should close the day centre, that we should start immediately talking to anybody who's sensibly interested about alternatives. That kind of makes sense, though. If I were one of the protesters, I might regard that as a bit of a slap in the face with a wet fish, frankly, given that they proposed something rather different than that, and you might argue they're almost being asked to be made complicit in the closure, and that's not right as far as I'm concerned. But nonetheless, if they want to talk to us, that's fine. I'm a little bit concerned about the nature of the temporary provision and the length of time it's going to go on for in the event that nobody comes forward being willing to offer an alternative service, assuming that one it can be provided, to these clients. Are we taking on an open-ended commitment, or are we going to time limit it, and when we reach that time limited, simply close down the service altogether if nobody's prepared to take it off our hands? Well, somebody presumably is taking it off our hands temporarily, if that temporary arrangement people are not willing to continue. Because that sounds like a very high-risk strategy that could well simply lead to a slightly the closure of the building on the 31st of December and the closure of the service at some other time, let's say, for example, the 31st of March. I'm picking a date at random. It could be any date. Because the one thing we don't want, clearly nobody wants, is a set of temporary arrangements running on into infinity out there. So it really does beg the question, what happens if nobody comes forward wanting to offer those alternative services or willing to do so in any meaningful way? I think what happens then, frankly, is we lose the service.
Right. I think you probably hit it on the head.
It needs a clear clarification. I'll go back to my first point, the report. It clearly states in the report that there are certain people out there willing to do a service for the people of Glamis Hall. It's there.
Yeah.
So we're not going to get a blank sheet tomorrow. We're going to have people come forward now. They know the decision will be made in October. Simple as that.
Okay. Councillor Griffiths.
This is no different than we've done with other services, and I'm thinking of tender situations. It's a very similar situation to what we've done with our recreation services, the castle, etc., whereby basically the service is out there for tender. And we've already heard some speakers here tonight. We heard some speakers at the extraordinary general meeting that stressed the importance of daycare, and we share those. So now what we're saying is, right, let's get round the table and look at all these options. And I think that's a very positive step that has come out of this meeting tonight.
Okay. I think we can go on for hours on this. I'm going to put it to vote. Those in favour of... Right, it looks like a two-part thing. It was Councillor Graves starts, Councillor Holloman to finish. Go on, put your first part.
I'm proposing that we, having done the research, we know the providers are out there and willing and keen to take on new clients, that we work with the action group, and as someone else said, other providers who are really not their immediate business, and the clients of Glamis Hall, in the light of the Glamis Hall closing, to offer. We can't offer it. We can lead the horse to water. We can point out these facilities are there, and then they talk directly with the provider. And to answer Councillor Scarborough's concerns, this may be a permanent arrangement. I called it temporary because I still have in mind there's going to be, between now and December, some form of closure to do the work, which everyone wants to dismiss. So, although it's temporary, or could be temporary, it could very well be permanent, because if people are well ensconced in, I don't know, they're all listed, aren't they? Dale House or something like that. In a lap of luxury.
We're wandering off. Just clarification on what you actually propose.
Well, what I'm saying then is that we offer, not us as a council,
yes,
we facilitate the offer of alternate accommodation.
And
that can happen any time from October.
Mike.
If I can add that the council will enter into negotiations with interested parties to take on the facility, well, take on the provision of the service to the users, but the deadline is the 31st of December 2012. So effectively, any interested users, any interested parties have got 3.5 months to come to an agreement with the council over a business case for taking on either the building and or the service.
Councillor Henry.
Just so we're clear, so we're not putting in there the truth that the council, it's just a one-line statement saying the council will not be providing daycare service going forward. We're not putting that there as in the...
Council will not provide daycare centre. Daycare...
Because that's what we're saying, but that's not what we're putting in the amendment. That's
all right, let me try and clarify, and I'll be corrected by officers. We will provide daycare facilities up to the end of this year, 31st of December 2015. 14. I keep saying 15, I don't know why. I'm glad I'm retiring next year. And as for the 1st of January, hopefully we'll have a new provider to take that service on. But that's just a clarification. Right, can we get to...
With respect, Chair, that didn't answer Councillor Henley's question. Are we saying that we will not provide a daycare service of this sort from the 1st of January next year, irrespective of whether anybody else is in a position to take it on? So this is a decision but to close our service. We've not talked at all about the nature of that negotiation, what the council might bring, what level of subsidy the council might provide to any new provider. We've not said a word about that, and I cannot know whether I mean, I think we're in the wrong place here anyway, but in deciding how to vote on this, I need to know whether those negotiations have any serious chance of success. Now, for them to have any serious chance of success, the Council clearly needs to be bringing something to the party, because people won't take this on for nothing, will they? I'd be very surprised if they do. I'm clear that we're making the decision to close our day centre service. I'm taking on, from what I've heard thus far, that we are going to close it whether or not anybody else is willing to take it on, and we're not at the moment in a position to say what incentives which we might give people who might be willing to take it on. Well, there are so many ifs and buts in that I have to go back to the one thing that is certain, is that this proposal is saying we close the day centre service on the 1st of January. I cannot vote for that.
Thank you. Right, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour of the proposal, please show. Those against? Abstentions? Carried. Right. So officers of tomorrow morning will start negotiations with the interested parties. And I'll come back and we'll know how much they want. Record the Labour Party votes against. Right. The last bit is 4.2c, use of Glamis Hall building for sports, leisure and other users. Anybody want to say anything on that, or do you want to leave that in abeyance?
No, let's deal with it. It's true that there are other users of the Glamis Hall building, and they are noted in the various reports that have been prepared by the officers. I think it would be fair to say that those uses can be accommodated elsewhere in the borough. I refer specifically to the sports and leisure facilities, as we currently have a number of facilities which are undersubscribed, namely Redwell, to name one, and Weavers, to name a second. So I would certainly be recommending that we close Glamis Hall for the use of sports, leisure and other uses, on the basis that the building is past its economic life.
Clarification, Chairman. If we're closing the hall at the end of the year, it's going to be closed anyway. What can we do about sports facilities? It's not going to be there, is it?
Right. Okay, anybody else? Councillor Walters.
Chair, I'm sorry to be a pain, but I want to come back to the report, because if people read the report, they will see quite clearly that these people who want to provide this extra sports facilities, the badminton club, for instance, for example, are more than willing to do it. With open arms, Chair. And all it needs is probably our officers to talk to them again with the club members to get this thing going. Right. As simple as that.
Okay, so you're suggesting allow the officers to talk to the interested parties. Okay, I can live with that. And everybody happy with that? Mm-hmm. We sure? Okay, that's item 4 completed. This committee will adjourn to 9 o'clock by this council clock. That's so that anybody who wants to go can go. Anybody needs a comfort break can. And I will carry on item 5 afterwards. Thank you.